Hello, my name is Kavita Melwani, and I'm a Master Certified Success and Business Coach with 2 decades of experience as an entrepreneur and almost a decade as a coach. I want to personally welcome you to the Soulful Entrepreneurs Club podcast, where my vision is to empower as many spiritually led businesses to run purposeful and profitable businesses aligned with their true selves. I want you to confidently and opulently shine your light without the overwhelm, the stress, or the burnout. Together, we will explore challenges that soulful entrepreneurs face and real implementable solutions so you can step into your unique purpose and shine. It is possible to bridge the success you already have with the truest, soulful, mystical parts of yourself. Are you ready to rise up as the leader you were born to be? Then join me, my soulful friends. The time is now for you to rise up and shine your light. The world needs you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. This tends to be one of the most popular episodes. It's the season wrap-up and reflections, what I learned this last season. And it took some time to put this together because I really wanted to reflect and share with you these lessons in the hopes that it will shorten your journey to living your most soulful life and soulful businesses and all the soulful careers and all of it, right? So I wrote down several things that I have as insights that may or may not, some of them are new and some of them are not. Some of them are like the next level of my growth and learning. And that is what happens for most of us. Most of us have this cycle of patterns of behavior. And once we start to recognize those patterns and work to change those, whether it's through subconscious work, through working on our conditioning, through therapy, through anything, right? Then a lot of times I hear from people when the pattern shows up again is, I thought I was done with this. Why does this keep coming up for me? Or why do I have to keep working on this is something that I hear a lot, right? And I've heard it described in many ways, and one is like a spiral staircase, right? So if you saw the journey of your life as a spiral staircase, when you get to certain points, it's the same point as before, which would be corresponding to the pattern, but it's at a next level, right? And so that is, when you're looking at your own life, that's what I encourage you to see it from that lens, because when we see it as, when is this going to end? I'm working on it. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to repeat this pattern. Then, the more you're like pushing to not repeat something, the more you're probably going to repeat it unconsciously, right? So instead, looking at it and working through it and understanding why you behave this way. And then, practicing a different way and noticing when things come up, right? It's complex when we're trying to change our patterns of behavior because we've been doing this for so long. We've been behaving this way for so long, which is why I always, especially the last few years, I've been talking about subconscious work because it's much more powerful than just changing the external behavior. So those are some of the things. So I just wanted to give that kind of background when I'm sharing these things, because some of them are some lessons that are similar to my last season's wrap up, but they're just at a different level, right? So, and I'm hoping to share that by sharing that with you, that you also notice that for yourself and you give yourself some grace and are kind to yourself, because I know that at least the clients that I work with and myself, my own inner voice is the most critical of any other voice, right? And I say things to myself that I would never imagine even thinking about saying to someone else. So, all right, so let's start. So one thing that I noticed this year, one major lesson, has to do with the comfort zone. Okay. And so I did a lot of things that were out of my comfort zone, and there were still a lot of things that I was just kind of, it snuck in to stay in my comfort zone. And so I started to look at some things in my life where, I started, these patterns developed of when I had started doing these things, it was uncomfortable and then it became comfortable and I stayed there. And there were quite a few things on that list, and I was not able to address all of those. And I'm still in the process because I really feel it's important for my own growth to keep pushing against that comfort zone, keep stretching what's in my comfort zone, because that's the way that I grow, right? And so our human tendency is to keep things the same, is to stay and keep things stable because that's what we're used to. And the reality is, like, the world is changing around us all the time, every single day. Change is, as they say, the only constant, right? So I don't want to function in a way that I'm waiting for the external things to determine and change, right? Instead, I want to look and see how I can, start to embrace the changes, right? And take those steps so that I can operate out of my comfort zone, right? And so one of the things that I did was this year that was out of my comfort zone was I had a lot of master classes this year, and different topics. And I had such good feedback from some of you, so I appreciate that, because when you put yourself out there in the world and put your work out there actually in the world, and you're teaching something, having that validation is helpful right in the beginning. So that's one thing that I did out of my comfort zone this year. Another thing that I did is I changed the way I exercise. My body was adapting to it, and it was like starting to feel kind of boring, And so I started to try new things, doing a group class, things that I had maybe done in the past, but then moved into my comfort zone after lockdowns, right? So that's another realization with the comfort zone, is that I realized that after those lockdowns, there was this things and patterns that I had created in my life that worked then. And it's become more difficult to break those, right? And, the more conscious I am of them, the easier it is to break them. And so that's something that is still a work in progress. But I just wanted to share a couple of things that I did that was out of my comfort zone, in the hopes that you start to look and see, are there some things that I'm doing that I really don't want to do anymore? I'm kind of bored with, but I'm just staying with it because it's comfortable. And, the comfortable doesn't mean that if it necessarily feels good, it's just comfortable because you're used to it. Okay. So that's something for you to look at in your own life. And the next kind of lesson, I would say, is the continued evolution of relationships, right? And I think that the relationships are the cornerstone of life, right? That's the biggest way that we can grow as human beings, is through relationship. And recognizing that, and not like using, not, I didn't want to use the word using, but I can't think of another way to say it right now, but using that as a way for you to grow as a human, right? And it can be a mutual thing, right? Mutually beneficial, because as you are showing up more yourself, showing up more authentic in relationships, working through challenges, that is how you grow as a human as well, right? And so the evolution of relationships, that's just part of life. And I've realized that there are some relationships that are for seasons in our life. Some relationships are for life. Some relationships, we're in people's lives for something that is beneficial to them, to either what they would perceive as positive or negative. And the same thing for other individuals. And so part of this year has been the evolution of relationships, some that I consciously chose and some not consciously, right? And so one of those evolutions is my older son, as he's, finished his first year of university, and our relationship is evolving in a way that we still are figuring out, right? And I actually have days where I'll miss and get nostalgic about the past, but then I remember those days with that lens of nostalgia when I was actually in some of those days. They were really rough sometimes, right? So reminding myself that when I was in those spaces, I would look forward to this time of seeing him as an adult, right? So that is just one example of evolution. The other thing is with friendships, right? And so as the kids start to get older, a lot of my friendships used to revolve around the kids' friends, parents, right? And then now it's like people are deciding, like, okay, so our kids are going off to college or doing things, like, where do we want to be? Like, and some people are moving, some people are choosing to focus on a few friendships, some people are branching out. I mean, it's a season of change. Okay. And so I'm allowing myself to be comfortable with that process. All right. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, that lesson, I guess, would be the how I start to integrate new things that I learn. So I've started to really accept that I love to learn new things. I love to just learn by reading, listening to podcasts, listening to books, even taking courses. Like, that is just something that I think that I'm going to allow myself to do for my life because I enjoy it so much. And one of the things that I did this year was, I'm in another training program, and I learned in that program about the Enneagram. And I took the Enneagram assessment, which I had taken before and several years ago, but now my number came out very different, right? And I'm not sure if I'm ready to fully share everything about that, but what I will say is that it was eye-opening, and at first I wanted to reject the results. And what that is really helping me do is to understand myself better and accept myself better. And then notice where I could improve, right? And so as I start to learn these new things, I also realize that sometimes when I'm learning something new, I let go of a lot of things that I did before that I enjoyed. And that's part of the learning process. And now I'm ready to bring some of those things back. Okay. And so some of those examples were, I used to do a lot of hypnosis and past life regression, but really regression that is focused on working on moving forward, right, with some kind of block. And I let go of that as I was learning these other tools and techniques. And as I learned more about dream work, as I learned more about Jungian psychology, as I learned more about the subconscious mind and all of that, right? I already learned that in the regression, but I learned different ways to work with the subconscious mind. Now I'm ready to bring all that back, right? Now that this stuff feels like I've learned it, like to my core, I'm ready to bring some of those things and integrate it more into my practice. And some of those things are, I don't know if I've done readings, and I really enjoy those. I do oracle card readings, and just like working with crystals and all the things that I let go of before to just kind of focus on it. I would still use it for myself, but not with my clients, and not even talking about it here or in workshops. But I'm ready to bring more of that in now. And I've also allowed myself to be okay with understanding that sometimes when I learn new things, and this is my process, I really need to fully embody the thing that I'm learning. And when it feels fully embodied, then I can bring back what still feels good to bring back. So that's something you're going to see on on the podcast and moving forward in my work. And the next lesson is that the idea of working on yourself never ends, right? So I want to kind of reframe that a little bit, because I hear from clients sometimes, they say, well, why I'm so tired of working on myself, right? And so the thing is that even that phrase, working on yourself, that feels heavy, right? And so instead of thinking of it that way, just trusting, first of all, there's nothing actually wrong with you, right? When we say work on ourselves, it almost feels like there's something wrong with us, right? And so there's nothing wrong with you. Instead, just saying, like, I'm continuing to evolve and grow. And so what do I want to focus on evolving now? I mean, even just saying that myself, I can feel the difference in my body of it feeling like evolution and not like, oh, work, right? It could be fun, it could be exciting, but it's the way that we look at it. And so, and part of that frustration is this idea that we're going to arrive somewhere, the myth of arrival. There is no real arrival, right? It's a constant process of evolution that actually is part of what makes life exciting and fun, so yeah, so keep evolving. Keep doing what you need in the moments. Just makes life more exciting and fun. All right, so another lesson this year is that seeking support is really important. And I've realized that part of my pattern, and of course, like I shared earlier, is the next level is doing things and figuring things out on my own and not asking for support and waiting too long, let's say, to ask for support would be more accurate. So I've learned this year that, when I've reached out and asked for help, asked for a conversation, can I meet you for coffee and ask you about this? Most people are ready and want to help and want to make a difference. And that's something that I've learned this year, that it actually is not taking, because it felt like I was taking from somebody when I would ask for support and help in that way, right? And so I've just done more of it and realized that it creates connection. It just does. And I know a lot of my clients tend to be introverted and, try to figure things out themselves. But if that's the case, I would encourage you to see, is there something that you need some support with? And is there that you can reach out instead of trying to figure it out yourself? Okay, so I have two more big ones, okay? The next one is that I have the ability to hide in plain sight. And it's interesting because I can tell myself, well, I'm showing up there, or I am there, and I'm physically present, right? So I'm physically present, whether it's online or offline. But then, am I really there? Right? It's like this kind of like, the invisibility cloaks, right? Like, it's a psychological invisibility cloak. And I know some of you have this ability too. And it comes for me from childhood and feeling safe if I could just blend in somehow or fit in, or like, the whole wallflower thing. Because I was really teased a lot at school. It was not easy. School was not easy for me when it comes to the social aspect. I was really good at studying and learning, but being different, being a child of immigrants, growing up in a place where I was really a minority among another minority, which was really interesting. And just not having the whole social conventions and just all the things that as an American is considered American behavior, right? I just didn't know. And, this was before the time of the internet and social media and all these things. So like that, I'm happy that people that would be, or children in my similar situation, would at least have those resources to learn some of those things. But, at that time, there was nothing like that for me to try to figure things out. And people were actually really mean. And so I know that that's how I adapted. in that time was to be able to be somewhere, but kind of hide. And that's my adaptive behavior when I'm stressed or when I'm tired. And that's also part of the other thing I talked about earlier, which is the comfort zone piece. So it's a way that my ego mind has figured out. So, let her think she's outside her comfort zone and do this thing. But if I don't fully show up and I don't fully allow myself to be seen and heard, then am I really going out of my comfort zone fully, right? It's kind of a mind trick for myself. So that's something I've really learned this year, and I am working towards changing because I want to, not because I have to, because I want to. And so that's also a work in progress. And so the last thing I want to share is I learned about investments this year. And I'm talking about investments for my business. And so there's some things that I invested in this past year that didn't turn out the way I wanted. And when I really reflected on it after I finished beating myself up about it, I realized that intuitively I felt like that was not the right thing, but I wanted what that investment promised. So I let that cloud my decision-making process, and I chose those things. And then, of course, by investing in it, there were things that I received, just not what I wanted or I thought I was going to get, right? So it is like this idea that when we think about like good and bad investments, I'm reframing that to say, like, every investment provides something, some energy exchange. And what is it that I received from those things? Instead of feeling like, oh, I just wasted money or time or whatever, right? But instead, what did I gain from that? What did I learn from that? What did I receive from that? As I give the energy of money and time, what did I receive? And really being clear about what that was and not beating myself up for not fitting exactly what I thought. So there are definitely more things, and but this is where I wanted to stop. This is where I thought was more than enough to share with the lessons I've learned this year. And I encourage you to do something similar for yourself. Reflect on the year. And, oftentimes we will wait till January to do this, but I find like the fall coming up is a great time to do this because there's like this shift in energy, the shift in season, and it just feels like a really good time for me to do that. So you don't have to wait and do this in January. I did this last year around this time. And I'm feeling like this is a really good time for me to do this and to do major shifts. And I've seen that in the pattern that actually works for me, that when I've made shifts and changes in business and in other things around this time, it works really well for my energy and the way my body works. So I'm going to continue to honor that. And you will see some changes in the podcast. I did have some challenges with the name of the podcast, so I am going to have to go back to the Aligned and Soulful name, which is again, investment, right? What did I learn from that investment? And it's okay. And so I'm going to integrate some of the things that I have let go of. And now that the new learnings have been embodied more, I'm going to bring that back. So there's going to be some shifts and changes. And, hopefully you'll keep listening if it's in alignment. If this was helpful for you, I'd love to hear from you. I have learned a lot this year, and even just by knowing that I wanted to do this episode and reflecting has been so helpful for me. So hopefully it was helpful for you as well. And if you know someone that could benefit from this, I'd encourage you to share it with them. And so in the meantime, you take good care until I will be back with the new season of this podcast. And it will be sometime in the next couple weeks. So take good care. Bye.